Okay, we're now live. Hi, I'm Elliot Fishman. Look, I got a haircut, every 3 months. That does happen. So we're back live with you. Hope everybody's doing well. I should mention that if you probably got some email from us about our newest app, which is on the Apple Store, which hopefully you will like. It's a really, really good app. All of ours are really good, but it's the CTisus quick guides. It about 250 different topics. You can press into chest, and then it gives you a bunch of choices, and you'll see images, key diagnostic points, and all sorts of stuff like that. It's really meant to be a very targeted, large amount of information in a very short space. And Lily and Sarah did a great job putting that together, and you can see, I think Lily just put it on the comment mode. Anyway, today what am I talking about? I'm talking about quiet quitting. Well, if you're quiet quitting, if you're loud quitting, you would just not show up for this talk. So, what does quiet quitting mean? It's interesting. People always have spoken about where in a job you kind of get fed up and you're just going through the motions. And perhaps that's a more common term that people will use in the past. Going through the motions, the person comes to work. It's like a government employee used to say, right? You come to work, you get the salary at the end of the week, and you just simply keep working until it's retirement, and then you quit, and that's it. Quiet quitting, there's an article in JACR. It's an article in press, so you can read it in press. It'll take you no more than 5 minutes to read. It's called The Silent Retreat, Quiet Quitting in the Academic Radiology Workforce. The author is Subha Ghosh, and I think it's a great article to read. He's from the Cleveland Clinic. I'm not sure if what's happening at the Cleveland Clinic, but he does make the point, and it's a very well taken point, that quiet quitting is what's going on in academics. That basically, remember, academics, private practice and academics, okay? Most people still go into private practice. It's always been their way. Private practice always had one advantage over academics. Well, they make more money. That's always been an advantage. But it's a more structured job, right? Because in private practice, you need to do excellent radiology, take care of your patients. It's clinical work, whether you're doing mammo or CT, MR, angiography. It's a very well-defined single task. Academics has always been trickier, right? Because you need to take care of the patients. We read films, often the more difficult cases. But then we have to teach residents, fellows, CME, and we also have to do academics. Remember, you go into academics not to be an instructor the rest of your life, and when you become assistant professor, that's only a step to associate and a step to a professor. But in order to make those steps, you have to write. You got to publish. Publish or perish was a typical statement, but you have to publish. You got to be doing quality work. You have to be doing quality teaching. And so there's always been this challenge in academics of balancing all three of them. And perhaps it's never perfect. Perhaps sometimes you're doing more research, and sometimes more teaching if you go to a meeting. And sometimes you're doing more clinical work if you're working that weekend or that night. But what's become now is, with the volumes going up and academic radiology in many places not being competitive on salaries or benefits, what you're doing is just reading more and more films. And when you read more and more films, basically that tripartite mission becomes a single part. But that's not what you signed up for, and that's not what you want to do. Now, what quiet quitting means, it reflects, I'm going to read this from the article, a growing disenchantment in the academic workforce. Unlike traditional quitting, this is not about walking out the door, which is quitting. It's about emotionally checking out. It doesn't mean failing to read cases or skipping teaching assignments. It's more insidious. Journal reviews go unanswered, memberships dry up, mentorship stops, lectures are perfunctory, research is shelved, academic time and energy are increasingly redirected into personal projects, side gigs, locum tenens shifts. At its core, there is a recalibration of effort in response to a growing perception that extra effort no longer yields meaningful reward. Okay? That is really a problem. If you look at it, I'm on some journals, and journals will say that if you skip the COVID years, you go from pre-COVID, skip COVID, and the 5 years after, the number of submissions for publications in the US is down 30%. There's a lot of submissions from China and Europe and Australia and Japan, all a bunch of countries, which is good, but the US is down 30%. I'm not talking about acceptance, I'm talking about submissions. Well, if you're not doing academic work, you're not submitting projects, and that explains the problem. It's really this issue about burnout. What quietly quitting is saying, look, hey, I'm doing my job, I'm going to read the films, and I'm going to go home. I'm not teaching, I'm not mentoring, I don't have the time to write articles, maybe they won't let me go to meetings anyway. It's this misaligned incentives. Private practice is clinical only. And even in private practice, the really good groups make certain people aren't overworked. And if you're working more than maybe you should, you get reimbursed accordingly. That's not what is happening in academics across many institutions. It's not a unique thing at one institution, but it's this, maybe I should just work from home. I could do remote. I could read in my pajamas. I don't need to be bugging with residents and fellows and writing, but I'm not doing it anyway. I'm just kind of whatever. I'm just indifferent to it all. Now, that is really bad. The article talks about disparities in expectations versus rewards, cultural and generation shifts, erosion of institutional loyalty, which is very true. I think most people will believe that the institution only cares about them reading films, because institutions have gone from leadership being famous doctors, people you looked up to being a bunch of administrators who look at radiologists or surgeons or any doctors. Well, I need 10 surgeons, I need 12 radiologists, I need 6 pediatricians, I need 80 bottles of contrast, I need 3 scanners, I need 100 rolls of toilet paper. It's just one more thing they do. And administrators, just looking at the bottom line, that's all you can measure them on. They're not getting paid if you write papers or you present or if you're happy. Yes, every hospital does these surveys, and the surveys come out poorly, and oh well, it's the world and all this and all that. Well, what can be done? That's a good question. Quiet quitting in academic radiology isn't a trend, it's a symptom, not of laziness on the individuals, but of systemic malaise. The authors don't go into, or the author doesn't go into great detail of what needs to be done, but does say that you need to have institutional reform, and just has a chart. And Ruth Carlos, who is the editor of JACR, actually posted this in LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn, you can look at it there with some of her comments. I think it's a very real problem, and I'm afraid to say I think it's getting worse. The challenge is, how do you fix it? There's a very famous Einstein quote that says, I wish I had it in front of me, but the people who got you into the problem, what makes you think they're the people who are going to get you out of the problem? Okay? Just think about that for a second. Steve Jobs said, work is such an important part of your life. You need to work and do great things. If you're not doing great things, if you're not happy, change jobs. you don't want to be doing that. We're short staffed enough. But, it's those things. What is it that you could change? And do you have the people who are going to change it? One can argue if people were really smart, they would never get in this predicament. So the fact they're in the predicament means they really weren't thinking. And so giving everybody a cookie one day or a smiley face on some email or something like that is really not going to do it. The real question to me is, we need to make change, but who's going to make the change? Is it possible to make that change? Or are we too far downstream that there is no going back? That's for you to think about, and people will write additional articles looking at the subject. But those of you who feel a little bit overwhelmed, read the article. And even if you're not feeling overwhelmed, read the article, because it might help you understand your feelings and what you're thinking about, and really think about ways to go forward. Again, you don't want to be unhappy. So it's very, very important to really look forward and not always look back. So with that, I'll stop there. If you have any comments, send them to me. I don't see anyone posting anything just yet. But if you do, send us comments and I will get back to you. And with that, have a great day, everybody.